I think she's pointing at me. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Heathen Talk episode 17. Tonight we are talking about stuff and things and world acceptance worldview and world rejecting worldview and maybe some witchery and all sorts of fun stuff. I always feel like since YouTube made this change, Lauren, I feel like we need that Rocky Horror Picture Show line, anticipation, because I'm sitting here, I'm waiting for you to wave at the camera.
Yeah.
And then, you always point off to the side, and I can't quite tell if you're pointing at me or what's going on.
If it's at this point in time, then you want to go ahead and just assume that I'm pointing at you.
Well, somebody's got to point at me. So tonight, like I said, we are talking about all sorts of fun stuff. If you are a fan of the show and you have not liked this video or subscribed to our YouTube channel or gone to the website and done the things, go to heathentalk.com. Check us out. We got stuff. We have the Yule Market up. We have a user map. I know at least on the subreddit we use, there's been a lot of questions about where people are and where you can find heathens. We have a user map. The subreddit has a user map. There are ways to find heathens near and around you.
I have a whole article on our page about how to find other heathens.
Also, I'd like to point out on the whole user maps things, whatever website you go to, whether it be the Heathen Talk one, the subreddit, or any of this you find, they only work if you use them. I mean,
it's true.
Number of times where I've had people come on, hey, I checked the user map and I didn't see anybody in my area, so does anybody know anything? And then I'll go back and check the user map and see that they didn't tag themselves on it. So, you might think about that, because people are a lot more likely to start tagging themselves when they see if there's other people in that area. Don't use it.
Absolutely. So if you're interested in finding other heathens, go to the user map, add yourself, see if there's anyone near you, and check out the groups, check out the subreddit, check out our website, check out the Facebook pages. There are ways to find heathens.
And I just want to say, for those of you who aren't regular listeners, if this is the first episode you're listening to and you hear us talking about the subreddit, that would be our True on Reddit, and there are links to that on our website at heathentalk.com, as well as links to other great, I'm not going to lie, I'm the one who does 90% of the work on the website. I'm pretty proud of it because we do have a ton of resources into our links page, blogs, other good heathen podcasts, other good blogs that you want to read, our producer Mark's Anglo-Saxon Heathenry blog. I
love that blog.
I'm just gonna plug right now Being a Better Man podcast, which is not heathen, but they're friends of ours, as well as our other projects, the Accessible Heathenry Project. So yeah, please go check it out. There's tons of information. We got events, we got networking, and we have ways that you can get a hold of us if you want to advertise. Speaking of advertising, Josh, we should talk about our sponsor this week.
We should. Tonight we're sponsored by Heathenry, which is a book that I have heard rave reviews about. I skimmed over it. It was fantastic from what I've skimmed. And the author is a good friend of Lauren's.
Yes. Heathenry is kind of an anthology. It's also kind of a sociological work, but it's a kind of a survey of the ritual and kind of heathen practices of women, not just in the United States, but also in really all over the world. There's some in Europe, and really discusses kind of our experiences in the community, good and bad. I'm heavily featured in it, as well as several other heathen women that you guys know from my Ladies' Night podcast. And it's a great book. I'm not just saying that because, one, I'm in it, and two, because they're good friends of mine, but also just a really great, this is volume 1, which is Ritual Practices of Modern Heathen Women. Volume 2 will be out early next year, and also it is actually the top link on our Yule shop, as well as her other business, which is a stitch at a time, where she does clothing and sculptures that are kind of inspired by Old Norse processes and old Germanic, or really old European processes. So go check it out. That's at heathenry.com, or yule.heathen.com will get you a link there as well.
The Yule store is something that we did last year, and it was fantastic. We're super glad to be doing it again this year.
Bigger than better than ever this year.
Well, I mean, we've only done it once. So better than ever is pretty...
Bigger and better than any other Yule roundup of awesome heathen vendors you're going to find.
There has never been a better Heathen Talk Yule vending marketplace.
All right, so tonight, this is the part of the show where we typically toast someone. And we're not toasting an individual tonight.
No. Yeah, tonight we'd like to toast a specific type of individual, a group of individuals, if you will. I'd like to toast the hosts.
And not us.
Yeah, not us. We're not toasting ourselves.
The small H hosts, not the big H hosts.
Because, this is the time of year. We live in a place, well, most of us, all of us hosts, most of our listeners, I would say, probably live in a place where people don't tend to stay necessarily in the same area their entire lives. They graduate high school, they go off to the military or college or whatever, and they find some new place they want to live. I know that all of my family lives thousands of miles away.
They get dumped and decide to move with their mom across the country.
Something, and so finding ourselves in places where, there's not a lot of family necessarily. And we have these people out there that like to throw gatherings that are for their adopted family, if you will. I know for Thanksgiving this year with my family on this other country doing their various gatherings, I went to Thanksgiving at my neighbor's house, and there was very few people there that were blood related to each other. They were all people that were in the same situation that I am, that my neighbor's in, and just people that were far away from family and needed a place to be for Thanksgiving. People that have, their annual parties they do during the holidays, people that are just constantly trying to make sure that these rituals of social gathering don't fall by the wayside, because these things are extremely important. And without these people that are willing to open up their homes and go through the trouble and the pain in the ass that it often is, we wouldn't necessarily have these things for a lot of us in the modern day. I've thrown these parties. I know they're a pain in the ass. And so I give mad props to anybody who does them. So,
well, and for those of us like myself, I was invited to the Thanksgiving that Torrin went to. I was sick as a dog, so I didn't go. But for those of us in my situation, we're new to an area or just far away from family. My family is 594 miles away.
That's next door, man.
Practically, but it's an expensive $200 trip next door.
That's all.
I don't make much money. I'm a poor person.
I'm messing with you.
But I'm first world poor. I mean, I'm sitting here in front of a computer with 2 screens. I'm very first world poor.
Well, I know, Lauren, you live in the South, and I know that hospitality is a huge thing down there.
It is, and I have a lot of friends who are, especially when you live in kind of a city. There's a lot of people that live here who are not from here and can't get home, and sometimes your family may be fairly close, but you get Thanksgiving off, and that's it. If you work in retail. I mean, I can't tell you how many Thanksgivings and Christmases we've spent without my brother and my sister-in-law because she worked at a restaurant or she worked retail.
Well, and I imagine, I've worked retail and having to get up. I worked flow team at Target on Black Friday. So I had to be in the store 3 hours before it opened, which was technically 2 hours after Thanksgiving dinner.
Yeah.
And then work until 2 that day. And I got assaulted by a little old lady, puked on by a small child, and told by my manager that I could not go home. I had to buy new clothes at the store. It was, so
Torrin would have lost a job.
I don't work at Target anymore. But yeah, it was those jobs and having people who work them who can have a place to go and be with their friends. Because I have friends up here who work retail that are far away from their family, and knowing that they have a place where they can go for the holidays is super important to them.
And also, there's lots of circumstances. There are people whose family, it really doesn't matter. What matters is, we're a hospitality culture. We're a hospitality religion. And that's something that I'm going to say this, there's a lot of heathens that don't do like they should. But that's pretty much everything. And every religion. But to those who do, this kind of falls under my general hail the doers that I like to do in symbol. Those who do, those who host, that's it.
Put up with the massive pain in the ass of having large numbers of people into their homes that don't have to deal with the aftermath and the cleanup, just for the joy of making sure that everybody else feels joy.
Pretty much.
So, on that note, to the hosts.
To the hosts.
To the hosts.
And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, maybe I should do something like that, maybe you should.
There's no maybe. There's a just you should.
If you can, you should.
If you can. That's the maybe. If you can't, then find someone and help them. But if you can, be a host.
Well, but even if it's just one person, be a host.
So, Lauren, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking some high quality sweet tea.
Is there any other kind?
There's low quality sweet tea. Have you been to McDonald's?
Yeah.
I meant, is there any other kind of sweet?
Specifically, I am drinking Milo's, which is the preferred.
How do you have no calorie sweet tea?
Because it's Splenda.
Okay. You shouldn't have told us.
Guys, I'm a crackhead when it comes to sugar. So, it's Milo's, and that is the preferred Southern non-homemade sweet tea. And since I have been working on school stuff all day, I had my husband pick some up.
Fair enough. Josh, how about you?
I am drinking one that is fun to say. I am drinking top of the feckin' morning Imperial Espresso milk powder with notes of Irish whiskey and vanilla beans.
Milk powder or milk stout?
Milk porter.
Or porter. Sorry, it sounded like you said powder. Fair enough.
So it is shiny, but that's the bottle.
Is it good? Is the question.
It is. It's interesting. I haven't decided if it's good yet. It's got the milk flavor to it, right? And I can kind of taste the Irish whiskey in there. But all of the flavors together, it's kind of a lot to process. It's not bad. It's just a lot to process.
You'll have to tell us when you're done.
Absolutely.
Sometimes there are beers out there like that where you don't know if it was good until you're done with it. I've been down that road before.
What about you, Torrin? What are you drinking?
Well, I'm actually drinking two things because it's just that kind of night. No, honestly, I started out with I did open a beer, and I'm partway through it, and it's very good. Which is the label says Trader Joe's, and I'm completely comfortable with that. I don't usually shop there, but every year they do a partnership with Unibrow to put out a holiday spice dark ale. It's a Belgian. It's delicious. It's definitely done with Belgian yeast. You can't miss that. It's spicy and interesting and dark and 9% and wonderful. I never would have known that Trader Joe's does this because I don't typically shop at Trader Joe's. But a few years back, my brother-in-law gave me a bottle of, I think it was the 2012 vintage one year. And it was great. So I've been buying it every year since because it's always great now. However, that's what I opened up to drink on the show. But I was lamenting to people that I didn't have any glug to drink. For those of you uninitiated, which few fans of our show should be at this point, glug is a holiday drink that the Swedes make that is it's happy in a bottle, This is why the Swedes stopped going to war. It's a fortified, spiced wine drink that is consumed hot. And I was lamenting that I didn't have a batch of it ready for me this year. I've only made one batch, and it was for somebody else who doesn't have the time to make his own this year. And I was sort of sad about it. And then I realized, as I was looking for bottles to put the next batch that I'm going to make in, I still had some aging from last year. So that's what I'm drinking right now. A 1-year-old vintage glug, and it's amazing. And you can't have any.
Are you sure I can't have any?
Of the 1-year-old, probably not. I don't know how much of it I actually have to share. You'll definitely have some of this year's, which I plan on making tomorrow afternoon. The beautiful thing about this too, and I think my recipe is probably on the Heathen Talk website. If not, it will be.
It is.
Okay, yeah, I know we put it on the Facebook last year. Anybody's welcome to steal this recipe and make it and alter it to their own tastes and whatnot. The beautiful thing about it is it makes your whole house smell like Yule when you're making it. It's just cinnamon and cardamom and oranges and all those flavors, clove. It's just all just in the air, and it's amazing. So even if you don't drink, you should make it for other people just so your house can smell like it.
Absolutely. So now that we've talked about what we're drinking, before this turns into another beer podcast.
That's why I shouldn't go last.
Let's move on into our subject. We kind of have a multifaceted subject tonight. We're talking about several different things, including how heathenry is a world-accepting religion versus a world-rejecting religion.
And what that means.
And what that means. We're going to go into a little bit on witchery and those sorts of things. But I want to start us out with the world-accepting versus world-rejecting point of view. And I'll start out with the first impressions I was given when I started looking into this when I first became a heathen years and years ago. And the basic definition that I was given is that a world-accepting versus a world-rejecting religion is really about end goals. As heathens, we're striving to make a better future for our descendants, but we're not necessarily caught up in this eternal bliss. Versus world-rejecting religions, which are always striving for this delayed gratification of nirvana, heaven, paradise, what have you.
And that is that I think that's where, when you come down to world accepting versus world rejecting, that's where you see the divide between what I believe is a heathen and what kind of my flavor of heathenry is, and people who have more of a New Age influenced idea of heathenry. Or as some people call it, ossetry.
Thank you.
So, Torin, what do you think here?
I think a lot of things. Sorry, I was distracted by things around the house for a minute to repeat the question.
When it comes to world accepting versus world rejecting, I explained how I first kind of came into it. Lauren commented, when it comes to that, what is your view? How do you see world accepting? Heathenry is a world accepting religion and worldview.
It's all about whether you're worried. Wow, this is going to sound the way that just popped in my head sounds like a ridiculous motivational poster, but it's kind of about like being worried about the ride rather than the destination. The point is, a world rejecting religion is world rejecting because the world doesn't matter. They are world rejecting because the goal is to achieve some sort of afterlife, and or being worried about what kind of afterlife you're going to get. Whereas a world accepting religion is one more like ours, where you're gonna get the afterlife you're gonna get, But what you're worried about is actually making sure that things happening in this life, in this world, are proper.
Now, I'm going to have to disagree with you on that.
Okay.
Because I think there's another part or facet of the idea of world rejecting versus world accepting that we're really ignoring here. And that is, because it's not just about the afterlife. It's also, I think, about trying to use, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase it, but it's the idea that within, for instance, within most Judeo-Christian religions, there is this idea of, prayer being, there's this idea that they kind of have this, okay, I apologize, guys. I've finals. The idea though that they put forth of, okay, well, I am I have this, my religion gives me this duty to change the world in the image of my religion. And, it gives me this duty to try to evoke change, not because there's any reason other than, my religion tells me so. But the key here is me. It seems most religions that are very world rejecting, it's also very personal level religions.
I have to just go right back and disagree with you on that. I think that might be the way things currently rest, but I think that's more of a cultural influence than otherwise. For example, within, let's say Christianity, the idea of, the your own personal Jesus thing is relatively recent development in Christianity. And yet it was still, before it was more of a religion of, change through personal agency, it was still very much a world rejecting religion.
I'm going to be honest with the both of you. I'm lost on what the hell you're talking about.
I just think that, we're looking at something here where you do have this idea of world rejecting and world affirming, world accommodating, world rejecting, which is Roy Wallace. That's pretty much, he came up with that classification, where you have, I think another part that we're not touching on is the idea of seeing the world as inherently deviant and a perversion of the divine plan.
I think I can agree with that. I mean, when we're talking about specifically, let's be honest here. We'll just cut to the chase. When the three of us are talking about contrasting heathenry against other religions, we're mostly touching on Christianity. None of us have been Muslim. None of us have ever been Buddhist. Not really, anyway. I toyed around with it in high school.
You don't know me, Josh.
I mean, I'll be honest here. When it comes to these things, I feel pretty confident in contrasting it with Reform Judaism, Christianity, and Wicca because I have experience in all three. But for me though, world rejecting is very much, to me, growing up evangelical movement is very world rejecting. They believe that, the way the world is not God's plan. And it's their duty to then change the world in that image. Versus heathenry, which is much more like, we just kind of adapt and we adapt and we take it as it is and we just accept that this is the world as it is based on what has happened in the past. And I don't have a duty to go out and convert every single person to heathenry.
Well, I mean,
I don't have the duty to convert one person to heathenry.
right. I want to be clear here, though, about, for example, we're going to keep going back to Christianity. It's going to happen a lot during this episode, I think, just because of experience. But as an example, Christianity, I wouldn't say is really focused on changing the world. They're talking about changing people, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's a death cult. And I don't mean that in the negative sense that it sounds to a lot of people. That's not a negative judgment. Saying it's a death cult means they're concerned about what happens to a person's immortal soul after death.
I disagree with you only because if you look historically, there was this incredible need in most religions, but specifically Judeo-Christian, Muslim. There's this definite need theologically. The Great Commandment, Paul's letters in the New Testament. They're all very much about trying to exert social control and exert changing the world to better fit God's plan.
Well, the motivation is the issue there, though. The motivation isn't to make the world a better place. The motivation is to make people Christians.
Right, but my thing was, I wasn't necessarily saying the world is a better place. I'm saying to make the world more in line with God's plan. I mean, there's the Crusades. There are countless examples in history that Christianity may in fact be a death cult, but that does not change the fact that Christianity also has been. Theologically, Christianity is also about changing the current world.
I think we're having an argument about the difference between Christianity theologically, which I disagree with you as far as the theological end, and more about what it is culturally. Culturally, it's often about changing the social paradigm.
Right, but I'm just saying, regardless, Christianity, I think, hits the idea that the world is deviant and a perversion of the divine plan. That's what Christianity is. I mean,
that's so. Little known fact about Josh. Josh went to school for Christian theology. My major was actually ministry, and it really comes down to the fact that when it comes to Christianity, there is the fall from grace. It is the fact that when sin entered the world, it changed the world. So the world is a deviation from God's plan and thus must be changed.
Yeah.
But the theological point that the theology of the New Testament is much more in line with changing the world to make it better so that other people will see that you're better so that they can be Christian and get to heaven. Changing the world is a means to an end versus with us, where changing the world is the goal.
Right, and that's, like I said, that was the point I was trying to make. When you look at the actual world-rejecting religions, I was trying to get to that definition to kind of. But anyway, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I don't want to debate Christian theology. I would go see my family if I wanted to do that. I'm going to talk about.
Actually, just going to talk about the irony of Heathen podcast debating Christian theology.
Well, Josh went to school for Christian ministry. I went to school for Wiccan ministry. So Wicca, I'm going to bring up Wicca, and I'm
not qualified for.
I'm probably going to piss off some of my professors, and because some of them do listen to the podcast, they're actually fans.
Hi, Lawrence professors.
Yeah, former professors. Yeah, because British traditional witchcraft has more in common, actually, I would argue, with heathens. Heathens and BTWs have more in common sometimes than heathens and neo-Wiccans, eclectic Wiccans. Just in the fact that there's this very idea and push on tradition, even if your tradition's only 70 years old. But Wicca, to me, is not a world accepting or affirming religion, because theologically there is this there's this push, you must do magic in order to put the world in alignment with the Lord and Lady. You must do all of these things, because if the world were in alignment with the Lord and Lady, then, you know, we'd all be happy and joy and everyone would be running around and, you know, so you have to do this. And then there's the elements of reincarnation and there's elements of death. But at the end of the day, you know, there's this huge push on being, it's a very push on individualism. And it's a push on performing these great feats of magic that are centrally kind of, one, you're kind of commanding the gods to do stuff for you, which I always thought was kind of funny. And two, you're also, you know, there's a responsibility there that you must make the world a better place in whatever your version of better place is.
Well, I mean, I still have to go back to doesn't that make it a world accepting religion? Because the whole point there is not to make the world more, for lack of a better term, make the world more Wiccan for the sake of where people's souls end up in the afterlife. The point is to make the world a better place so that the world's a better place.
No, because it's a world rejecting movement because it views the prevailing social order as deviant and perversion of the divine plan.
Well, as a heathen, I view the world's prevailing culture to be deviant. That doesn't mean that I'm rejecting.
I think there's a technical difference there, because I don't think any of us would deny the fact that the current Western overculture is deviant from a heathen perspective.
But the second half, we don't hit the second half.
Everything in heathenry is all about building up communities. There's very little individualism. We live in a very individualistic world. However, when it comes to changing the world, we're more willing to take the world as it is and change our portion of it to make it better for everyone versus imparting our will on divine forces. We have no problem, you know, working around the whites, and even if they're getting a little uppity on our land, doing whatever we got to do, but we take ownership of this versus trying to take ownership of the bigger this.
I think that the distinction of the second half, though, being perversion of the divine plan, because I don't really see there being like some, I mean, we have, yes, there is the, you know, there's the web of weird and all of that, but there's not like Odin sitting up there going, well, you know, my divine plan for you folks is blah, 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 blah. You know, it's not theologically, the idea of a divine plan doesn't really fit into heathenry. So heathenry, by definition, I don't think could be a world rejecting movement. That being said, we are by technical definition, we're a world accommodating movement.
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of nuance to this, right? Like, I mean, there are aspects of most religions, including Christianity, Wicca. I even know some people who don't identify as anything but New Age, who have aspects of world acceptance or world accommodation within their world rejecting purview. And it's more a matter of practicality than anything else. You know, when we're talking about, and I go back to Christianity because it's what I was raised in, it's what I studied. But when we're looking at that, there are moments where they take the world as it is because they don't really get another choice. You only have so much leeway before the world reaches up and smacks you down.
And that's actually pretty, yeah. Though New Age is just really expensive paganism. Really expensive.
You know, this is completely tangential. When I was a kid, I grew up in Northern California, and we would go up to Mount Shasta. There's a spring. Mm-hmm. Some of the best spring water you can get. You can walk right up to the spring. They don't want you to, but you can fill your bottle. when I was up there, I was like 10. I found these giant crystals. I mean, we're talking, yay big, and easily that big around, so perfectly formed.
Those that aren't among the 5 people listening live, about a foot long, about 4 to 5 inches diameter,
at least. And I thought somebody had lost them, so I picked them up and I took them with us, and I went down to the only hippie store in town, and I gave them to the lady. It was like, I think somebody lost these at the spring. And she yelled at me for 20 minutes about removing someone's spiritual essence from the spring. It was, It was a learning moment for me.
If you don't want somebody molesting your spiritual evidence, perhaps you shouldn't leave it, or spiritual essence, perhaps you shouldn't leave it laying all over the ground.
See, I thought you were just going to
raised not to whip my spiritual essence out in a public place.
Go ahead, Lauren.
See, I thought you were just going to tell me that they offered to pay you $20 for.
Oh no, they didn't give me a thing. They just took the crystals. I'm pretty sure they stuck them on the shelf and stuck a $100 sticker on them.
Yeah, see, I actually have a friend who it's right up here. I can't really, but I have a friend who is he makes his living digging crystals from near here. Beautiful quartz crystal clusters. For those of you playing along at home that can't see it, and he makes like money off that. And what he does is he does this, and then twice a year he drives out to San Francisco and sells them to shops out on the West Coast for an insane amount of money. And then, that funds him for 6 months for him to come back and do more stuff. Because people out there will pay an insane amount of money for stuff that we can go dig up all around here.
So I think there is one tendency of world accepting religions that we kind of glossed over.
Okay.
That isn't really talked about in world rejecting circles unless you're New Age. And that is weird New Age quasi-science healing stuff.
Pseudoscience?
Yeah, that's the word I was looking for.
WEIRD.
I'm sorry, what?
WEIRD.
WEIRE?
He's saying weird is a not weird or religious term, but weird as in weird.
Still recovering from a cold.
That joke was funnier before it had to be explained.
Well, I apologize for being sick. But one of the things that is very common, especially when you're talking to heathens, we love science. We love us some good old-fashioned scientific method.
The difference is that as heathens, we talk about science and so this is the difference between a heathen gathering and a New Age / evangelical charismatic gathering, because they do this stuff. You say that, Josh, about New Agers, but you have not been around enough fundies.
Oh, I'm saying they just don't talk about it the same way.
Oh,
I grew up around fundies.
The New Agers.
It's just a different language.
Well, but the New Agers and the New Age stuff, like the pseudoscience, the anti-vaccine, the homeopathy, that kind of stuff, has invaded the fundamentalist Christian scene. It's really weird. Like, you can't tell the difference sometimes between a New Age person and a fundy Christian, because they both are talking about anti-vaccine and aromatherapy and essential oils the exact same way, and it's creepy. Not sure if at Wiccan Gathering or First Pentecostal. Skirts, long hair, no makeup, talking about essential oils. But yeah, I mean, science isn't something, heathens, we like science. We like I think one of the things something that makes us very world accepting is that we accept the limitations we have in heathenry.
We do. And, the whole science thing. I think that's because heathens can understand the concept of duality. And I don't mean necessarily duality in the sense of, the dual-natured God, since we're talking so much about Wicca, among other things tonight. And I'm probably using the wrong word for this, but forgive me. My beer is 9% and my glug is stronger. I mean in the sense that a thing can be more than one thing. The sun rises in the morning, and that can be two different things. That can be the great big burning ball of hydrogen and helium that is a nuclear holocaust and provides us all sorts of energy to make our world work. It can also be the track of Suna across the sky in a chariot. It can be both of these things at the same time.
Well, I think one of the things that heathens do really well is dialectical reasoning, where we come in with these two very opposing things. The sun is Suna. The sun is also a giant ball of gas. And we're able to discuss and reason within our own minds and understand that they are metaphysical contradictions, but we can hold both. The idea with dialecticals especially is that you can hold both ideas without going crazy.
Right.
I learned that from a fictional Wiccan.
I learned that from a book, and not an academic one. It was a work of fiction. And
Which one?
When I say I learned that, I understood the concept. I think it's best stated in this particular work of fiction by Terry Pratchett. It's called Hogfathers, or The Hogfather. And I think literally everybody should read it. Because
I learned it from, and fans of the series will know her as Junie. But the Emberverse series, there's a character named Juniper McKenzie, and she goes on about dialectical reasoning, where it's not about either or, it's about yes and.
Speaking of Wiccans,
I learned it from going through dialectical behavioral therapy because I'm crazy.
Oh, I wasn't going to say it.
You know what? I have no shame. I have a mental illness. I do, and dialectical behavioral therapy helped me a great deal in dealing with that. But yeah, that's where I learned it, and kind of really got heathenry through that, which sounds weird, but it's kind of like there's some other things in my life that are not really heathen, but yet I understand heathenry so much more because of them.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit distracted right now. We've got company coming over tomorrow, and my wife is doing some cleaning, which is not usually distracting. It is distracting when it's my desk, because usually she won't go near it.
Now I do have.
I'm completely comfortable with it. I just want to put that out there, but it's a little bit distracting. It's odd.
Okay, so anyway, I'm gonna kind of, since it's 15 till 10 my time, I'm gonna kind of pivot us a little bit, but to get into a couple of other things, because I think we've got this whole idea of world accepting, world rejecting. I think we feel very good about this, and I think we've proven kind of, and I don't care about proving what the other religions are, whatever.
Right, we don't have to agree on the specifics there.
Well, the other religions are there as a contrasting point.
Right. That's what I'm saying. But I think we pretty much have been clear on why heathenry is a world accepting religion. That's where, but I want to talk about that as it, okay, so if we're a world accepting religion, then I want to contrast that. You will have some people say, and I have heard this, I'm not going to say by who, I don't want to embarrass them, because they have since understood that they were wrong. Well, if it's a world accepting religion, then you shouldn't have things like taboos.
That's stupid.
Thank you, but I want to discuss this because there are people who think this, and I would like to tell them firmly why they're wrong.
So it's an interesting point, because when we say world accepting, right, I mean, it kind of conjures up the idea of being tolerant. For instance, I told an ex-girlfriend of mine once that once you ask someone to change their behavior, you're no longer being tolerant of it, right? So when I say I'm world accepting, it's not that I'm tolerant of all things. It's that I accept the world for what it is. But there are always going to be cultural taboos that just pop up, and heathenry is going to bring some very unique taboos to the table, whereas we're always going to have heathenry as a minority religion is going to have two sets of taboos. You're going to have taboos based on the overculture. You can all drink now. And then you're going to have taboos based on your heathen culture, which is going to be very specific to your group and your tribe, but is going to share some similarities with other heathens across the world.
I think one thing that I'm gonna dive into a little bit of more of Lauren's arguments why 12-step programs are inherently heathen. 12-step programs are world accepting. And one of the things that I have heard in a million times, and that is, accepting doesn't mean I have to like it. Accepting doesn't mean I have to be happy about it. But what it does mean is that I accept what is what is, and don't focus on what should be. You know, if my husband, I'll tattle on my husband for a minute. My husband likes to put things on the kitchen table when he walks in. Now, no matter how much I would like to keep the kitchen table not covered in crap, he still does it. And he's done it for 40 years. He grew up, that's how the way things were. It's his habit, and that's how it is. I don't have to like it, and I don't have to be happy about it, but I also can't accept it and don't really get, I don't blame my husband for messing everything up because, he put stuff on the table.
Well, taboos really come down to the tribe and the person.
Right. Well, I was trying to talk about acceptance versus approval.
No, I understand that. I was moving on with the topic.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is that I am not forcing everybody in the world to share my taboos. For example, and I'm going to bring this up because it was, a very good recent example happened on the subreddit that we like to reference so often. Witchcraft in a heathen context. It is
insert moon mean here.
Insert moon mean here. Hi moon. Hope you're listening. Somebody came in babbling about witchcraft on a heathen subreddit. And the fact is, there are heathens that practice witchcraft. There are heathens that believe in witchcraft. There are heathens that don't believe in witchcraft, etc., etc. One extremely common taboo among heathens is not to talk about it in public. That is something that has to do with the individual in the tribe. And I'm certainly not going to talk about it in public. And most of us in that sub aren't going to talk about it in public. The whole thing with Moon was that she didn't want to accept that we didn't want to talk about it in public. But that's neither here nor there. The point is that is a taboo. I'm not going to talk to you about specificities of magic and witchcraft in the tribe.
It's very important to specify here. The taboo is twofold. One, witchcraft in and of itself is a taboo, but it's not necessarily a bad taboo, right? And it is something that sets a person apart from the general populace.
Well, in this case, it's not even about it's not even about witchcraft itself being taboo. It's about talking about it being taboo.
Right, and that's my second point, is the discussion of the practice itself is taboo in a public space, because that is a very private, personal, or even just tribal practice where the witchcraft or witchery used by the wise women in my tribe is going to be different than the witchery used by the wise women in Lauren's tribe, or woman. Do you have more than one woman in your tribe?
I'm it. So
okay, so wise woman.
Well, it's something that I brought up, but that doesn't preclude. Someone brought up that, well, we shouldn't. I think that there's a place for discussing witchcraft in a historical sense with people outside of the tribe. Are we talking about, we're talking about, sources and that kind of stuff. Or for instance, like historical documents, like Ben, my kindred brother, transcribed a Icelandic charms and herbal healing book that was a written, basically, like, it's a piece of a book that it's mostly Christianized, but he translated it. And to me, discussing like historical sources, that's fine. I can have discussions with.
No, that's an academic topic, right?
Right. But the topic of witchcraft isn't necessarily, but the practice and the discussion of how to do stuff, or, this kind of stuff is taboo. It is something that I firmly believe, is something that should only be, one, transferred face to face, and two, it should be ideally something that a mother passes to her daughter, a father passes to son, or a kindred, within a kindred. It shouldn't, in anyone who, because you mess with that stuff is dangerous. I, as someone who did dabble in some magical practices when I wasn't a heathen, that shit's dangerous. I mean, there's just no other way to put it.
So I put it this way on the sub. If you are eating at a restaurant and you notice your chef doesn't have any scars on his fingers or her fingers, don't eat there.
Right.
They don't have the experience. If you are talking to someone, or someone is telling you that they practice witchcraft and they've never been burned by it, it's never overwhelmed them, don't trust them. They don't have the experience, or they're a charlatan. One of the two.
Or inversely, I'm going to say this here from a heathen perspective. If someone's willing to share with you the secrets and powers of witchcraft and they don't know you, run the other direction as fast as you can. Because even within the modern, like, Saith community, which some people agree and disagree with, blah, 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 I don't know much about, like, the Saith practices as far as the actual practices and the people who are teaching that I know, that I trust. It's all person to person, and it's all not, I'm going to meet you and I'm going to teach you the secrets of Saith, like, over a weekend. It's similar to almost like how a lot of tribes have that probationary period. They have to know someone and prove that they're going to be somebody who, one, can handle that kind of work, and two, can, one, that can handle it, and two, that can just, that are not going to misuse it.
Right. It's kind of a tangentially related thing, but the concept of magic with runes is a good example. I have had people ask me to teach them that, because I have spent some time studying runes. Whether or not that is something related to magic, or whether or not I practice any runic magic, is none of your damn business, and entirely the thu of my tribe. But the fact is, whether I do or not, I wouldn't teach it to anybody over the internet. That is something I would consider taboo. That is something that I would discuss with people face to face, I'm not even going to confirm or deny whether or not I do it. And I can tell you truly, that's a flip of a coin for you guys listening the way I'm talking about it. I'm not trying to, intimate anything. It's just.
Meanwhile, I'm perfectly willing to teach you the alphabet.
Well, it's like
I'll teach you how to. Yeah, I'll certainly teach you how to. Read and write. Maybe I'll get a speak and spell and reprogram it.
Oh God. So, okay, so I'm gonna throw this out here for you guys. With regards to the runes, and I talk a lot about Ben. He's also on the network, so I don't feel like I'm not telling tales because I really like what he does here, and this is something he does publicly. So I'm more bragging on him than anything. He gets a lot of requests because he's an author and he's a big name heathen, even outside of the heathen community, to do talks on runes. And so his talks on runes are always super historical. What were runes used for? Where have we found runes? And he basically goes into all the stories of how many times runes that we have found basically boiled down to Sven was here.
I have to say one of the best moments of my life as a heathen when it came to learning about area was I have a particular friend that I didn't know him as well at the time. This may have been, I think, a couple of years ago. He posted he was. I had good feelings about this guy. I thought he was a pretty good, and that he wasn't going to be a complete idiot. And that's when I'm like, well, that sounds interesting. And it was, only about a 50-mile drive from my house. So I'm like, what the hell? I'll show up. And showed up, gift in hand, attended the class, and was really, really impressed. The entire thing was based on pure scholarship, largely Pullington, and it was mostly about a history lesson of here's how they were used, that we know of for sure. It's like an academic rundown of the evolution of part to another across different geographical locations and time periods, et cetera, et cetera. And that was the type of class that I would go to that's being, semi-publicly advertised. There are some that I haven't gone to because I've known exactly what they're going to be when I showed up, and I really have absolutely no desire whatsoever to have somebody try to show me how to use the runes as tarot cards. But yeah,
well, and we've gone rounds, well, not rounds, but we've gone over and over about how was there runic magic? Yes. Do we know what it was? Not a clue. We know it existed. We don't know if they used standard writing runes. Wouldn't make much sense to me to use standard writing runes because everybody knew them. But who knows? And I, for one, I try not to play with the unknown. That's a quick way to hurt yourself.
Yeah, well, I've got stories, and those stories are for my inner, so the rest of you can fuck off.
Well,
and it's like 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
8 o'clock.
Good job.
I looked at the clock and realized we were an hour in and nobody had done it, so it was going to be up to me.
Well, and, but the thing is that at the end of the day, we can't really... At the end of the day, it's really hard to do heathen when it's not face to face, whether it's magic, whether it's learning. It's really hard to do heathenry without the relationships.
Well, so
and the passing of taboo information is comes from those relationships.
I want to address something just real quick about this.
Mm-hmm.
In the giant blow up thread, and if y'all go over to the Arslan Also True subreddit, you can read it. It's in there. But in the giant blow up, the biggest thing that people seem to think was that the heathens don't do magic. There is a heathen who I know and respect and frankly adore. I think she is a wonderful human being, and I wish she was over here so that she could be part of my life more often, who does magical things. She is a part of a tradition that has magic in it, and she's still one of the most down-to-earth, realistic heathens I've ever met, who is full of book knowledge and does heathenry. So it's not that magic or witchery isn't heathen. It can be. It's just not all of it is. I'm a firm believer in hedge witchery. I think that is something that will make a comeback in heathenry and needs to. We're just not there yet on a grand scale yet.
And that's where I have to disagree with you, Josh.
I know a few.
Yeah, regionally, I know people who practice. I know probably more heathen women than not that practice some form of hedge witchery. The thing is it is very personal practice. Or tribal level practice. It's not something that they talk about openly, because we'll go back to taboo. It's the stuff that they pass down to their children or to people that they mentor and teach.
Well, I'm not saying that it's going to be a public thing. I'm saying that it's not.
It's happening very frequently out in the Midwest.
But it's still one of those things where you'll run into heathens who will tell you magic is bad.
You'll run into heathens that will tell you that the Eddas should be treated like the Bible. They're wrong. But that
Sorcerers say that, but
I'm just saying, just because there are specific sects of heathenry that believe all magic is wrong, doesn't mean that hedge witchery and all that kind of stuff isn't widespread, because it is. But the thing is, the difference between hedge witchery in a heathen perspective and hedge witchery in a other pagan perspective is that we'll talk about the academics of it, we'll talk about the cultural implications, but it's like any other private kindred only stuff. I am happy to talk to you all about herbalism in the Ozarks, because that's a topic that fascinates me. One of my kindred brother's wives wrote her master's thesis on it. I have a lot of knowledge from a historical perspective. What I won't talk to you about are specific practices and beliefs that are held by my kindred regarding local whites, herbs, and plants. Unless you're someone I trust. Now, are there people I would have this conversation with that I know and trust? Absolutely. Like Danielle, that the author of Heathenry. She's a good friend of mine. I've known her over a decade. She's taught me a great deal about what it means to be a heathen woman. She's taught me a lot of it. I'd have that conversation with her. But, as much as I like most of you people, one, I would never share it with Josh or Torrin because they're male. And this is kind of this is the feminine, it's a feminine aspect. And two, I wouldn't share it with you guys because you're not local. And, if I tell you that such and such plant, that's something that grows here, wild, is, this is how you do this, that's going to mean absolutely jack shit to you guys, because you do not live in the natural state where we have these things.
And, well, to be honest with you, we don't need a lot of that around here, because the environment around here wants us to live and prosper.
Well, and frankly, herbalism, depending on whether you are practicing herbalism for medicinal purposes, I know plenty of people who use willow and such as a cure for headaches and such, and that's going to translate wherever you are. If you have willows, that's going to cure your headache if you use it correctly. If you don't, it'll kill you. Or marshmallow, not marshmallows, but the actual plant that has medicinal properties. But then you have things like the 9 herbs charm, which was regional to continental Germany and I think southern England. But those herbs aren't necessarily going to translate to Western Cascadia or Arkansas or Idaho or New York or wherever the hell you happen to live. So it is something that needs to be learned regionally. And frankly, it would be improper of me to ask or attempt to cajole Lauren into teaching me something about her practice. Right.
So, I mean, if I could, I'd like to bring this topic around a little bit. I think we pretty well covered the concept of taboo and why there are things that we just don't talk about with people. Does anybody disagree? We've covered that pretty well.
We're good.
Okay. So what we've really been talking about tonight mostly has been the entire concept of world accepting versus world rejecting. And we've been specifically couching that in the concept that heathenry is a world accepting religion. And I want to bring us back a little bit to why we are and what that means and how you individuals listening to this deal with that, how you make that switch. I also think we've covered pretty thoroughly that Christianity or most Judeo-Christian religions are world rejecting, which means our overculture is largely world rejecting. So that is a huge worldview shift for people. However, before we bring back into that topic, we do have a question in the IRC, and I wanted to get to that. It's from Skullgrim. It says, is the world accepting versus world rejecting dichotomy really a useful comparison? No religion believes itself to be world rejecting. One might argue that a religion with any sort of afterlife or concept of immortal soul cannot be world accepting. So, before we continue on with this, I want to get y'all's take on that particular question. Lauren.
Go ahead, Lauren.
Here's the thing. What is the purpose of the afterlife? Because to me, is the afterlife a reward, or is just the afterlife a reality? To me, in my personal heathen belief, and I'm not going to say every heathen believes this way, I'm only speaking for myself on this one because beliefs on the afterlife are very varied. And that just because we don't have this, book that tells us what happens when we die. And so for me, the afterlife is not like a reward. It's like not something I'm working towards. The afterlife is a reality. When I die, X will happen. And it's not something that I'm like, well, when I die, X is going to happen and I must, if I do X, Y, Z. The fact of the matter is when I die, I am going to hopefully, so long as someone honors my wishes, I'm going to go into our equivalent of the family mound and, and live that way, become hopefully a DCer. That's what I would like to happen. I don't necessarily see it as a reward. It's just that's what happens when you die. Not very different than, it's just kind of the natural order of things. It's like you can't really, the sun comes up tomorrow. When you die, these particular things happen. And I'm not living my life so that there's an end goal. It's just part, to me, it's part of the world.
Josh? Sorry, Lauren.
It's just part of the world. No different than, it's really no different than the sun coming up. Like I said, death and what happens after death is just a part of the world. So it is, to me, part of world accepting.
So I think the part of that I would address a little more is whether or not it's a useful comparison. And frankly, it is only useful in a theological discussion. And Skullgrim's right. No religion wants to call itself world rejecting because it sounds negative. Rejection has a negative connotation. However, in a theological discussion, for instance, when I go back home and I am talking to my mom or her best friend who has a PhD in Christian theology, it's a very important distinction to be able to say, well, Christianity is world rejecting, and be able to establish that baseline of differences between our two faiths. And it's not going to have much use to someone in their day-to-day life. It did me no good at all whatsoever to think of myself as world accepting over world rejecting until I started learning theology and putting that into conversation or debate. Beyond that, you're right, it doesn't have much of a purpose. But as a theological tool, it's very important.
I disagree on multiple fronts.
Well, you're allowed to be wrong.
Yeah.
And in this case, I'm not. Firstly, I have met many people who are perfectly comfortable with the idea of being described as world rejecting from a Christian perspective.
Okay, that he's right about.
Well, yeah, I mean, I bet plenty of people, I know people who take pride in it.
Right, exactly. People just revel in the idea they are world rejecting. And that's fine for them, I guess. But whatever, neither here nor there. I'm not here to make judgment calls. I mean, I make them, but that's not what I'm here for. And these people are solely concerned with their afterlife and with the afterlives of those around them and with anybody they come in contact with. And that's what their religion calls them to. And so they are not only world rejecting, but they are proud to be world rejecting. And if you explain to them and make them understand what the terms mean, they're very okay with it. They're not so much okay with it when I use the term death cult, but that's because they're wrong. Because it very much is a death cult. It means pretty much the same thing. Damn near. Now, to get onto the point of whether or not it's an important distinction, I believe it absolutely is. Because it informs your worldview. And I believe that we've all prattled on at great length to the detriment of your sanity about worldview and about how that is extremely important, about worldview being how you define what being heathen is how you view, what your worldview is, how you view the world around you, how you view your interactions with the world, how you view your people's interactions with the world. And having that distinction between world rejection and world acceptance really makes a big difference in how you do things. And I apologize if my rambling really sounds like I'm just repeating the same point over and over again, but I kind of think it's important. Whether or not I give to local charities is informed by whether or not I believe that world acceptance is important, about the betterment of my community for the sake of my community. When I give, it's not me giving as a heathen, it's me giving because this particular thing is good for my community. When I give, it's not because I want people to say, hey, look, those are heathens and they're giving and that's great. No, I do it because I think that particular thing that I'm giving to is important. When I perform a service for people around me in my community, I do it because it betters my community. Just the other day, I happened to be by training a mechanic. I saw some people on my off ramp headed to my house after work, broken down on the side of the road. Because I happen to know how cars work, I thought, hey, maybe I should stop and help those guys out. And so that's what I did. and I didn't, finish helping them out and getting them their car started again and getting them back on the road by saying, hey, by the way, I'm a heathen and you should be too, because it'll, do good things for you. No, I just did it. And I didn't do it for personal glory. I did it because it made my community a better place. And that is why that particular bit of worldview is extremely important, because it informs your motivations. It informs why you do things. It informs what you do. I really don't, I can't express how much I disagree with you guys about that not being an important person.
Well, so I think the idea of being world rejecting is important. The terminology is not.
Well, the terminology is never important.
Like the actual calling yourself world accepting, it doesn't mean anything.
Okay,
Living
when it comes down to it, terminology and theological debate is for a bunch of bitter old grognards on the internet to get together and try to, in their way of doing things, make the world a better place. It's why we become bitter and old. But terminology is not the point. The point is the practical offshoot of the terminology. And the practical offshoot of the terminology is extremely important. And maybe I'm taking the question wrong, but that's where I took it.
I think the only one who could tell us if we answered the question or not is Skullgrim. So once the delay catches up, maybe he'll tell us if we're full of crap or not.
Maybe.
I do want to say that Torin, there are things that we do personally when it comes to charitable work. That part of the reason we do it is to raise our own reputation. So yeah, I'm doing it because Heathen, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Well, no, nothing wrong at all. I mean, my tribe decided we're going to do a charitable donation to a local charity this year as part of creating a new Yule tradition for our tribe, and damn straight we're going to make it the name of our tribe. But
well, in that spirit, Torin, I challenge Stone Shore Foreign Said to the beer and taco challenge. We'll go over details after the show.
Okay. But I can't think it's bad if it's beer and tacos.
See, there's a local group that my kindred is going to be volunteering with over Christmas break from school. And they had a fundraising challenge where for that particular day, there was a local mortgage company that was going to match their donations that they got during that day they need to buy some new equipment. And we made a donation in our name because, I want to normalize being heathen.
Right. And, that's great. Like I said, we're going to do a similar thing. Our tribe is going to be doing a donation in our name, and it's simultaneously to, help the charity itself because we believe that it is truly important in our area. And I keep talking about it in vague terms because we haven't actually decided which charity we're donating to. It's actually going to be more than one. But point being.
Yeah. Well, that was just, but I will say this, the point was kind of brought up. Josh addressed my concerns about the useless in the terminology. It strikes me as holier than thou and needlessly divisive. Yes, but, and this is what I'm going to say to that, is that I think that it can be very useful in the current kind of theological split that we're seeing in Germanic paganism. And that is because we are, it's just for what it is, we have this issue where we are going to be, trying to think of a good way to say this. At the end of the day, we are, sometimes these terms are needed to be able to show the difference. You have people who identify as Asatru who live their life so that they can go to Valhalla. And that's not a heathen concept. And so sometimes these terms are useful to be able to understand and tell people, this is why we are different. This is why you are this and I am that. We may share beliefs in certain deities, but we fundamentally are incompatible because of this.
I stepped away, so I don't know what we're talking about. I'm so sorry.
I'm talking about the fact that the need for the idea of world accepting, or those terminologies. And I just simply said sometimes they are very useful in explaining to Germanic pagans that are more New Age. Like, for instance, the sect of Asatru people who believe that they're working hard to go to Valhalla.
First of all, we're working hard to go to Valhalla.
but you know the kind I'm talking about.
Yeah. So to bring it back to why we're world accepting, which, I mean, your comment, the tail end of it that I caught there, really kind of did.
Yeah.
But it boils down to the fact that we live here. Let's be a part of this and not focus on going to Valhalla or whatever the hell the name of Freya's Hall or Thor's Hall or wherever you're wanting to go. It's not about that. It's never been about that. It's about the people who come after you and whether or not you set them up for success. If you live in America, which the majority of our audience does, but if you live in America, except for Marcel, a couple of English people, and my little brother who's watching all the way from Germany, he's not live, I don't think. At least I hope not. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Go to bed, you stupid bastard. But we live in a world where, for the first time in a couple of generations, it's entirely possible for our children to not have it as well off as we do when they grow up. And so it's very important to take that tact of making the world better for those that come after you and not worrying about what happens to you when you die. Because when you die, you don't have any control over what happens. It's not up to you.
And I think something that I'm going to put out here, and one of the benefits of being world accepting is that, I've been very, we've talked about mental illness and heathenry. We've done a show, and if you haven't listened to it, please go listen to it. But I have anxiety, among other things. Being heathen, and I wrote a piece about this, in fact, which I just recently discovered is like super downvoted for some reason on Reddit, and that confused me. But the idea that I am part of a group, I can accept the world as it is, that I don't have some divine obligation to change it. I am able to just say, this is how it is. It is what it is, and it's going to be what it's going to be. And all I can do is what I can do. And it is not my responsibility to do, it's not my responsibility to, make other people do. I can get on here, I can give you my opinion, I can tell you what's right, what's wrong. At the end of the day, oh my God, the relief of that, of knowing, outside of, yes, I have a responsibility for my tribe as chieftain. But at the end of the day, I make my choices of who's in my tribe. And then I have to just accept and trust that, they're in, and, or they're, my family, it's my family, and I can love them even if, they're not in agreement with me. They're still my family. And I still need to, do my best, but I can't control them, and I don't have to. And there's no divine directive that says I have to try to change everyone to make them think and act just like me. And there's a comfort there. And really, as I've started it, really, really like accepting that over the past few years, guys, I went from an agoraphobic who could barely leave the house to someone who goes to school full time, works a job, holds a state office for a large organization, and runs a kindred.
Practically runs the most popular heathen podcast on the internet. So there's that.
Yeah, but I mean, there's just, guys, you don't get that in many other faiths. You don't. For people with mental illness, the idea of being world obsessing, not world obsessing, because that's what it was before, but world accepting, it's probably the greatest part of heathenry to me. And I'm so lucky that I have had this opportunity to be heathen and not, if I were still in many other religious traditions, I'd probably still be cuckoo crazy.
So I'm going to change the subject real quick because I got to brag about something for a second.
Okay.
It's not even me I'm bragging about. My baby sister is having a kid.
Congratulations.
I'm going to be an uncle. And she doesn't listen to the podcast, but I know my younger brother, her older brother does. And I just got to say, I'm like the proudest person in the world right now because my kid sister is grown up and is a wonderful woman. And it's fantastic.
Well, definitely, congratulations to her. You know what? It may not be you, but it is your family. And that's, we beat into the whole idea of there's this a belief that I hold: the smallest unit is not the person, it's the tribe. And so congratulations to your tribe on, the adding of a new member soon. That's awesome.
Do you know yet whether or not you're going to be an aunt or an uncle?
No, but they do go in for the third ultrasound on the 13th, and then I find out if I've got a nephew or a niece.
Let me know, man.
I'm kind of excited. I mean, I got to go all the way to Germany to meet the kid, but still excited.
You will.
So yeah, that's awesome. I don't really, that's really cool, and it's all I keep thinking is, oh God, people keep having children.
We do. I mean, there's only 7 billion of us now. We have to work on that.
Makes you feel any better? I'm not having a kid yet.
Yeah.
I am not. My desire is not to give birth to a child, but to adopt. So I won't know when I'm having a kid until probably right before I have one. So yeah, I won't be announcing a pregnancy anytime soon.
And I just want to point out that those are strong words to be uttering over the internet. You never know.
I do. There are biological reasons why there will not be reproduction. Let's just put it that way.
I'm not saying you're going to be announcing your pregnancy, but you just said you're not going to be announcing a pregnancy. Yeah,
but I meant my pregnancy. I'm not going to be... Now, if my sister-in-law gets pregnant, that would be awesome, because then my mother would get off my case.
I will say, Josh, you got to watch out for next year. Cascadia moose already caused one pregnancy.
So, it's almost time for us to wrap it up. I do want to thank our sponsor again. That is Heathenry. Great book. Go buy it. Read it. It's available at heathenry.com. It's on iBooks. It's on Amazon, I believe. It's just go buy it. Go read it. Because it's a really great way to kind of see what other heathen women are doing.
Absolutely. It is definitely something worth checking out. I do want to mention to the other people who have requested to be advertisers, I have your requests. To one of you, we're just waiting on really to wrap up advertising for Heathenry. To the other one, we got to reach out and see what you want to talk about, and we'll get in touch. But on that note, there is some housekeeping we have to do. Next week, I won't be on the show. I know.
I'm heartbroken. But we will probably have a guest host. I'm not sure who yet, but we will probably have a guest host next week.
Shoot for one.
Yeah.
After that, Heathen Talk has taken a holiday siesta. That's the word, right?
Are we? Did we decide on that?
I mean, I was going to take a nap, so I guess it's a siesta.
We're going to take a holiday hiatus.
That's the word.
Mainly because Christmas and New Year's both fall on Saturday this year. Or Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve both fall on Saturday. And I know most of us are going to be traveling and or doing some sort of event. I think almost all of us have a Yule event that weekend before. I will be hosting people at my house for our Mother Night Bloat. I know Torrin's giant Yule Bacchanalia will be happening.
Extravaganza.
So yeah, there will be. So
roast wild boar.
But we will be back in the new year. We also will be announcing something pretty big when we come back in the new year. So come back. You'll want to. But, we'll be here next week. Don't know what we're talking about. Don't know who our guest host is going to be. But Torrin and I will be here next week.
Well, and just because we're taking a couple of weeks off the live show doesn't mean you won't get some random stuff if I get bored and decide to do a video, or if Lauren gets super productive and decides to do a video, or if Torrin just randomly decides to do something other than be on the live show.
And you might get some...
Nothing going on for Christmas Eve, so maybe I'll just monologue at you all.
Okay. We might even have some video from one of the Yule parties. You never know. Because I'll have another Heathen Talk Network host in my home. So maybe Ben and I'll get on and talk about random things.
And, one of the weeks where we're taking off, Torrin and I will both be in the same place. So maybe there'll be something.
Yeah.
You never know. Could be all sorts of fun.
Just no regular live show. Because it's just, logistically, we just are not making it happen.
2016 has been a rough year for us. I'm just going to point it out. Like, I moved, the schedule changed.
I got a job.
It's been a rough one.
But
here's to 2017 being a little better for the Heathen Talk podcast.
But I will say this, we do have a new technical producer who's helping out with getting things uploaded. We are probably about to bring on, hopefully, a new live producer to help us out as well. So 2017 is looking good, and I look forward to it and getting done with this fucked up year. So,
and maybe we can convince Skullgrim to take some pictures and post them on our Facebook so that we can get all the people excited about Heathen Talk.
Maybe. All right, so we're over. So thank you once again, and we'll see some of you next week. And remember,
you're not the boss of me.
You're doing it wrong.
Everybody have a great week.